Hey, everybody. Well, welcome to this week's episode of Hormonally Speaking. Glad to have you here with us as always. A fun day for me because I get to talk to one of my favorite friends and colleagues. Her name is Vashti, and she is a functional medicine coach and founder of Green Papaya Health. Vashti Kanahele has a background in healthcare and international development. She's a certified holistic health coach through the Integrative Women's Health Institute. Vashti has pursued further education in hormone health, environmental health, completed the fixed-year period apprenticeship, as well as advanced studies in functional medicine. Before becoming a health coach, she worked for the United States Agency for International Development, focusing on maternal and fetal health. Vashti worked in conjunction with the United Nations on several projects in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. There it goes. She holds a BA and MSHS. At heart, Vashti is an advocate, activist, and educator. She's passionate about helping women learn to be their own advocates and educate them on their bodies and regain vitality. In addition, Vashti is an activist and a strong believer in women's rights. She's been an expat for 12 years, living in 6 countries. And while it's had its challenges, she can't imagine living life anyway. And we're going to talk about that today. In her practice, Vashti provides one-on-one consultations and coaching packages. Outside the office, you can find her on her mountain bike, hanging out with her family at the beach and exploring new places. Vashti currently lives in Williamsted, Curacao, with her husband and 2 daughters and 2 rescue dogs. Welcome.
Thanks, Christine. It's so great to be back.
I'm so happy to have you on. Yes, we've been here before, but it's probably been like couple of years since you've been on the podcast. Yeah, crazy. And as we all evolve, you're doing like so much more, deeper work now. And you've done all this functional medicine training, which is like amazing. Everybody, I'm like asking her questions all the time about her very advanced program and everything that she's learning in that. So she's got it down, especially about the thyroid. And we'll definitely talk a little bit about that today too. But let's start off with this new project that you spearheaded, really, right? Yeah. Because of your experiences living all over the world. Yeah. So it is called the Expat Health Code. And tell us what it's all about.
Sure. So I started Expat Health Code with my actually accountability partner and a fellow functional medicine coach, Tanya Rodriguez, who lives in Dubai. And one day we were like just chatting, during our studies, and we're like, we should really work together and we should focus on our community, which is the expat community. Mm-hmm. And as 2 coaches, we thought, okay, this is great. And then we're like, let's bring in Dr. Fox, who I also work with in my private practice. And he lives in Seattle, but he is a former military brat. And so he grew up moving around too. So we have these 3 different sort of experiences that we bring to the program. And he was very excited to jump on board and be part of it as well. And we really designed this program, this actual business, to educate, inspire, empower, and support expat families overseas.
So let's talk about what expats are for people that have never heard that term, if they haven't fully gathered.
People that live outside of their home country. So for me, my home country is the United States, but I've lived in 6 different countries. And every time we move, we have to develop our new community, find healthcare, and all of those things about, as you do when you live in your own country, but here it's different culture, often different language, and just the additional stressors that come from living away from your family and friends.
Yeah. I mean, and I can imagine in some of the countries that you've lived in, it's like, you've got the language barrier to work with. You've got just a whole different way of doing things and approaching health in a lot of ways, right? Yes, and so definitely. You may not be able to access all the things that you're used to being able to access in your home country.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And some places, naturopathic or functional medicine isn't really practiced in that country. Other places it is, it's wholly embraced, and it is their kind of healthcare. So it just depends on where you're at and the environment that you find yourself. Like, yes, definitely when I lived in Iraq, that was not a something so that I had access to, but that was a slightly like different situation than most people find themselves in overseas. Right. In Lebanon, it was sometimes the language barrier, though I had excellent healthcare there. That often surprises people. Cambodia was much different, not as much access, or even the ability to provide healthcare was very limited there, due to its being a third world country and just its own history. So going to like neighboring Thailand to have my daughter, which had excellent healthcare.
Oh, wow.
And,
So how far was that you had to go?
They actually border each other, so it was like a 45-minute flight.
Okay. But still you had to fly.
So I flew there, and then I lived there.
Wow.
While my husband remained in Cambodia for the birth of my youngest.
That's crazy.
But it was really great medical care. Again, surprising to people, right?
Yeah. I've heard that about Thailand. That it's good.
I mean, they have a lot of medical tourism there, so they get a lot of people from the Middle East and other Asian countries coming for medical care. And really, the care that I received as a new mom was amazing, unlike anything I had seen or had, because I had my oldest in Seattle. So it was much different to have those two dynamics and to see the difference. But again, it just sort of surprises people who are used to, maybe thinking that wherever they live is the best healthcare, that there are other places that have great healthcare. Nigeria, again, not easy to have access to great healthcare there. And now we live in Curacao, which is in the Southern Caribbean, and it is much like the EU in many of its, you can get a lot of things done here, but it's not exactly
it's an island, right?
It's going to be. So so there is access, but it is limited, but it's good healthcare as well. So I think it's just interesting to look at when you're living as an expat. This is what sort of motivated me to start this, is what's available, who needs help there, what are expats looking for and maybe missing in that new environment, and being able to support them.
For sure. So two questions. I want to hop back to the Thailand thing, because I'm curious what was so amazing about, the experience there and the healthcare that they provided in you having a baby. So that's one. And I'll come back to the other in a second.
So there is a very large expat population there. I want to say probably around maybe at least 1 million expats, from all over. And I could be off on that, but it's large.
It's large.
And so I was able to find an Australian midwife who knew the Thai system. Thais really like to have C-sections. I think they have about an 88% C-section rate, because they love to have their babies on.
They like set it up. Gotcha. Yeah.
Auspicious days for luck, etc. And so I said, I really want to have a natural birth this time. So I actually started working with this woman from Belgium in Cambodia, who got me started on all of the, how to mindset, visualizations around all of that. And then when I went to Thailand, I was able to link up with this midwife. So already I had like this sort of expat community.
That's cool.
Here.
Yeah.
And I had a woman from China who was helping me with like herbals and other things. And then, so when we went to the hospital, they were always very willing to say, okay, if you're doing well, we can definitely go down this natural birth route. Like they even have a natural birthing room at the hospital where I had Kate. And so it's all set up with, the balls, the bath, things that you can hold on to from the ceiling, everything is there. And they have midwives and nurses also that work at the hospital. So it was this much more, I felt sort of holistic care outside of it. Culturally wanting C-sections that, but they were very open to that. And so it was having my midwife advocate for me and what I wanted in that moment, to them listening to me.
Ding, ding, ding.
And I was like, no, I want to do it this way. Okay, we're doing well. Okay. So we met halfway, and I was able to have, Kate naturally, and
so a VBAC. I'm assuming you had a VBAC.
No, I didn't have. I had both my girls.
Oh, you didn't have a C-section.
I had an epidural with Kira, and then
gotcha. I see.
No drugs with Kate. Gotcha. And so, and everyone's birth story is different. I'm not promoting one way or another, but it was very. This was kind of what I was looking for, right? And it didn't go exactly as planned, but it was like still really felt listened to. And that I think is missing often in healthcare across the board, but especially we find in women's health. And so then afterwards in the US, like if you have your baby, like in 24 hours, if you're good, you're like out, right?
Gotta get out. Yep.
There, I was getting massage. At day 4, I had to ask to go back because like I was like, hey, I have a toddler at home. The Seahawks are playing in the Super Bowl tomorrow, and I would really like to see the game.
They're like, so what?
They're like, oh, okay. But they would take care, just really hands-on, making sure I'm okay, feeding me like real nutritious food. I don't know. I just feel like the whole experience was much more holistic and really focused on mom and baby, and not like how quickly can we get you
out. Well, you mentioning massages, like case in point, I after my emergency surgeries when I was in the hospital, I basically made everybody that came to visit me like rub my feet. And I actually think that was hugely impactful on my healing. And when I got out of the hospital, I had a friend, that was a massage therapist, come over a couple of times a week. And it really, for me, showed how important, after any kind of major medical thing, the power of touch is, right? And especially a mom who you've just given your body through this very, tumultuous, traumatic experience, even at the best of times, right? It's intense. And so to help you to really kind of like bring down your nervous system, to really calm that's, your state afterwards. I mean, I think that in and of itself would be incredible to experience.
Yeah,
right?
it was really nice. And just like, after having Kate, like, they were very big on like, okay, you're going to hold her, the skin to skin. Dad gets skin to skin time, letting the umbilical cord remain for, a longer period of time, things like that. So there was just a lot of that, that I felt very supported.
Very interesting. And everyone. I know that was a little bit off topic, but in some ways it's not, because we're talking about, figuring out things as an expat, right? And being sort of being able to see that there are pluses and minuses in different places, and having a network to kind of connect with, like what you've started. So my other question was, so Dr. Fox is his name, right? Yeah. So you have continued to work with him over the years of being an expat, right? Yes. And how has that been? Do you see him? I'm assuming, you've been seeing him online for a long time.
I see him online, and I transitioned away from being his patient to, because now we work together. Right. But so overseas we could see each other, and then I would fly home to Seattle. And when I was in Seattle, I would see him there. But so it's been a lot of telemedicine. And which is a great option for our overseas clients. Right. And then if you're in the Seattle area, you can have that one-on-one in-person visit. But that was really important too. It was part of this, was to bring the doctor and coach model to this. Because we together have seen really great results in having a doctor and coach work together on patients, and just that synergistic relationship that you can have there, and how that benefits your clients. So that's something we really wanted to offer expats, and offering healthcare that resonates with them. Now, not everyone knows about naturopathic and functional medicine, so that's another opportunity for us to, educate and inspire people. But also, if that's what you're used to and you're going overseas, you may not be able to find that. I know in the State Department system, that's not offered, and that is what it is. But it's nice to be able to see someone and have medicine that aligns with you.
Right. Absolutely. So what would happen, when you were seeing him via telemedicine, and say there was, you were somewhere where you couldn't access maybe some of the supplements, like what happens in those situations when you couldn't access what he was recommending?
But then we would, really go back to basics, or as it is, you have your community,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
okay, so someone's going back, say, to the US, hey,
Yeah.
can I ship this to your address? And then you bring it back to me. So
back.
you might not get it in the timely
Right.
ness that you would if you were at home. And that's something we do, is work with people where they're at. And then we would maybe like switch gears a little bit, to work on something more foundational that we can, like sleep hygiene or something, right? While they're waiting on getting those supplements. Or you're in the UK, okay, maybe you can get, someone's going home, or like in some places like Dubai, you can order off like Amazon or source very carefully, but like Thorn and other places that are on Amazon,
right.
Supplements.
Yeah.
You can get those. So you have to become creative in how you get things, but that's part of, when you have that community around you, you can lean on those people to help you.
Yeah, I can see that's one of the big benefits, because, even some of international clients that I've worked with, or that colleagues have worked with, you get caught in like, how am I going to get this to this person? How is this person going to take this test? But then as that community builds, somebody's like, oh yeah, I figured out this source, or I know somebody who's going to be there, that kind of thing. And so that's where that community model really comes in an amazing way. Yeah. I think that's pretty cool. So you guys are working together. So who was the third person that you mentioned?
So it's Tanya, who is my accountability partner in School of Applied Functional Medicine, and then also a coach.
Okay.
She's in Dubai.
Okay. So do you sort of set up where the three of you guys always work together, or on individual people, like it'll be two of you working with them? How is that all being done?
So it could be that the model that we're looking for, so we're sort of in like the pre-phase of some of this work, is that they would be able to sign up for like a package, and they can, whoever the available coaches, or if they align with, say Tanya, then they could work with her, and then they see her X number of times and Dr. Fox. Like that's how like the one-on-one model would look. And then we'll be offering different like done for you programs, so that people can learn about things and progress at their own pace too. If what they want to know is, oh, I want to know about like the basics of health, and here we have this, or I would like to know more about teen health. My daughter's going to, start her period soon, so I really want to know about that. Or we're really looking to support the LGBTQ community as well. So having all these programs around different groups within the expat community.
I love that, because I mean, some of those places that people are going to be, it's hard enough in the US sometimes to access things around periods and LGBTQ issues, much less other places of the world. And so having that, those foundations and access to those foundations is pretty amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. And I wanted to go back to sort of the doctor coach model and talk a little bit about that, because I don't know that everybody who's listening to this has experienced that before. And, one of the things that I think is really cool about that, and hopefully how we're moving in general with medicine, is that, the doctor doesn't necessarily have the time to sit with you one-on-one all the time and, coach you through things, right? Like they kind of come in with the sort of the bigger picture, like, this is what's going on, this is how we're going to tackle these things. But then, often they kind of hand you the information and you go off into the world and have to do it on your own. Right. And people can sort of fall out. So talk about a little bit about how the coach comes in.
So the coach would come in and say, maybe we're going to do the intake form together, like doctor, coach, patient. So we're all there. And then the doctor and the coach can come up with the plan and how we're going to implement that with the client or patient. And then either Tanya or myself would then guide them through those lifestyle and nutrition habits, changes, etc. And, following up with, how are you, just the daily follow-up. I think that people really need that accountability.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is so much of what we do. And so we would be that in between. So they would have multiple appointments with us, the coaches, and then, you know, 1 or 2 appointments with the doctor as needed. And of course, after that, as needed, or, you know, whatever, a la carte. But that's really how Dr. Fox and I have used that outside of Expat Health Code, and why we know that it works. And then I can consult, you know, because sometimes people will approach you with something that is outside of what you are allowed to practice as a health coach, or you should not, you know, be doing. And so then I can say, hey, you know, Dr. Fox, this patient is experiencing X, Y, and Z. Can I, you know, get your thoughts on that? And maybe they can book in with a call with you. And that's, all of us can be there, or they can just do that separately.
Right. And that's beautiful, because I know probably both you and I have experienced people coming to you with all the questions, right? And it's wonderful. They think you're very smart and know all the answers, but you don't. Or even if you may have an idea about an answer, it's out of your scope of practice. It's really something that only a doctor should be, you know, anything prescribing, obviously, you know, diagnosing, exactly. Telling people what they have, like, that's not in our wheelhouse at all. It's not supposed to be. And so to have someone, I would think that this experience would really keep so much from falling through the cracks, which it can if you just have one or the other, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in my private practice, that's so many of the people have fallen through the cracks. And I have several expat clients, and when you move from one place to another, you don't have that continuity of care. So that is something else that, you know, we would be able to provide people, is sort of continuity of care, and knowing, like, okay, you went from this place to this place, and you don't necessarily, you want to have healthcare in that spot too. I shouldn't make it, we're taking that away, but we can help with that.
In that transition. It may take you a while to find it. It may not be as good as you want it to be, et cetera, et cetera. So in terms of sort of the longer maybe issues that come up for people, you know, do you find that there's stuff that the expat community kind of deals with that maybe more often that maybe other people don't?
I feel like all people have health issues these days, but I really do think that stress, which we all experience stress, but I feel like expats have a bit of a different type of stress when you don't have a supportive community around you. Like when you're transitioning, right? You will make friends, and you'll have those friends as you go from place to place, but those people there with you, right? So transition stress, you know, moving every few years, like I move every 2 to 3 years. That is,
and you had to do it through in COVID this last time, which is like compounding the stress by 200%, right? Right.
And then I think sleep issues tend to really rise, because we're changing time zones a lot. And then people have a really hard time getting into a routine when they switch time zones. I know this for myself, and I've seen it in a lot of other people. And then you find that you're still struggling with routine maybe a year down the road.
That makes sense.
And then depending on what your work is, I mean, I think that it's very difficult to sometimes, I want to just say, I guess I'm going to go long tooth there if I keep going, but sleep and stress and cultivating community are like the three that I think really, and then nutrition. I can't leave out nutrition.
Right. Because depending on where you are, you're going to have access to different foods. And I can imagine, like, thinking about some countries that if I would have to move to, that, you know, you eat mostly maybe grains or, you know, wheat or what have you, when I've been off gluten for 15 years, you know, and the struggle that sort of comes up, and the ideas around those different foods in different places too. Right. And and I can imagine can be really tough, especially, I don't know, our bodies seem to be able to handle those changes maybe a little bit better when we're younger, but as we age, your body's like, what are you doing? Give me my food I need.
then you're not feeling good because you're not making good food choices that are good for your body anyway, because maybe you're too stressed to do it. You don't know how to do it.
Right.
You might not even know that you have something going on. Right. So all of those can be compounded. And then it's really fun to help people try new foods in their place that work for them. You know, it might be, like, for instance, Cambodia, morning glory I love morning glory that's, you know, like sauteed, but like people be like, what are you doing eating morning glory? You know,
what is morning glory? I don't even know.
It's
is
like
that a flower?
Oh,
it's
like
a green.
Flower,
okay.
But it's a green, right?
Okay.
But it's something that they eat there all the time, but it's a great way to get your greens. But you might not find, say, American spinach, because spinach in different places has various degrees of bitterness. Same with lettuce, you know? So it's acclimating to the healthy food choices that you can make in your given country, and helping people find that option as well.
What about testing? Do you find that in most places you're ultimately going to be able to do at least some basic blood labs and things like that? Or is it like sometimes it's just not even an option?
I haven't lived anywhere where you couldn't do basic blood. You're not going to find functional, very few places. I would say all the places I've lived functional would be probably Bangkok, but
so meaning like stool tests and hormone testing.
Urine, hormone, anything outside of, like, I guess, you know, straight blood serum testing. But what we love to use in our practices becomes much more difficult. So then again, it is like, oh, I can get it here, but how do I send it back?
Right. And it needs to go back in a certain amount of time usually, and all of those things.
So some of my clients have waited on that stuff, and we just do what we can with, you know, basic blood, because there's lots you can do with basic blood work. It's surprising and fun to look at. And then maybe when they go back to their home country, you know, they can do the testing there depending on where they live. But lots of these places, like, you know, have distributors outside of, you know, the United States or the UK. So it's just trying to find those avenues, and how to meet people where they're at is really the biggest thing.
Absolutely. So I do have to ask, is there any country that you've lived in that you feel like is ahead of the game with functional stuff as compared to, say, the US?
I think that I wasn't really doing functional medicine back at that point, but I would say Thailand, it had definitely the capacity, and probably does have people. And Beirut was phenomenal. They did tests, like I had miscarriage after miscarriage. And it was when we lived in Beirut that they were like, oh, you have X, Y, and Z, and this is what we need to do. And then we were able to get pregnant and stay pregnant. So, you know, cool. I felt like even if it's not functional, they definitely went the extra mile that you don't always see. I feel like, at least in my experience and with some of my friends' experiences in the States, you can have miscarriage after miscarriage and they don't really do much about it. Now they test a lot more for MTHFR and things like that than they did back when I was trying to get pregnant.
Right.
So things have changed in that aspect, but I do feel like there are places with better medicine.
Yeah. It's so fascinating to me, because even just working with, like, you know, clients in the EU, like, especially now that, you know, because of Brexit or whatever, and like things that they could more easily access before when the UK was part of it, and now that they can't as much, but then, you know, but it sounds like more things are starting to open in Europe now. So, you know, I'm sure at different places in the world, some of this stuff is like running full speed ahead.
Yeah. Like, I know I have a client that was in Paris. She had access to, you know, a lot more things there. I think the EU in general tends to be a bit more holistic in their approach, that just what I've seen. So yeah, I think that, you know, the United States is really good at trauma medicine and emergency medicine. But there are a lot of ways we can grow in terms of, you know, patient-centered medicine and getting away from sick care.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here because I do want to talk for just a moment about one of your main focuses these days, which is the thyroid, right? And this is, such a big thing that I try and focus on, really more recently, I'd say, in the hormone summits and everything, for women to understand how much the thyroid can impact their hormones, So what are you seeing in terms of, I guess, women in particular and thyroid issues? Is this a big, huge thing going on?
It is a big, huge thing. I feel like it is very much an underdiagnosed epidemic of hypothyroidism and likely Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune thyroiditis, which is not a disease of the thyroid, so to speak, but disease of your immune system, but it impacts your thyroid gland. So it's really every woman that has come into my practice, I think besides one in my, I can think of, has had, if not overt hypothyroidism, subclinical.
Yeah.
And then many of those Hashimoto's, and many are told there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
And that I don't accept that answer.
You're like, absolutely not. Yeah.
And so that is so much why, and I have Hashimoto's, and so I know firsthand that yes, you can change your diet, your nutrition, and your lifestyle,
and make a huge impact.
And makes a huge impact and go through life, well. Of course, I have flares. Stress impacts you more when you have autoimmune. My sleep can become disturbed. I get sometimes sick easier, but I've done the things so you can work with someone and find out how to thrive with hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's. And I think it's just getting people. It's not even getting people, it's advocating with your clients to advocate for themselves at their doctor's office and telling them exactly what they need to ask for, because you can give me a TSH and maybe it's fine, but that just tells me that your pituitary is working well.
Right.
So I would really like to see how intracellularly your T4 and T3, and we're not going to go all into this, are working, right? And I want to know what your what your TPO and anti-TG antibodies look like.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a client, a few months ago, and we were just doing some basics. So I ran, some basic labs on her, and thyroid looked excellent, except for 600 for, I can't remember if it was TPO or TGB, but I was just like, oh goodness, and of course, I don't diagnose. So I said, you should take this to your doctor. The doctor said, we'll rerun, because I think her TSH was a little high at that point. And her doctor said, we'll rerun your thyroid labs in 3 months, but not the antibodies. So they literally just reran like TSH and free T4. And I was, and my client came back to me. She's like, my thyroid's looking better. And I was like, this tells us nothing about your antibodies. It tells us nothing about your autoimmunity,
I would then just start operating. Like, obviously there's an autoimmune dynamic at play.
Right.
In that client.
Yes.
And just the way it's, shoved to the side is just, it's so wrong in my opinion. And
because they don't know what to do other than
suffering.
Right. It's like, they're like, we're going to wait until the thyroid is like completely broken down and then give you thyroid medication. That's how we're going to deal with Hashimoto's, right?
But that won't help your Hashimoto's.
Exactly. At all.
And you can keep taking more and more TSH, but it's not going to help. And that's what if you have a T3 problem, you can take all the T4 in the world and you're going to, you might feel better for a little bit. And then you're gonna be like, oh, I need to up this again, because they're not seeing the conversion and how that's working at the cellular level. And I feel that it's a disservice to millions and millions of women that it's not taken seriously.
Absolutely. And it's like, your hormones, it's going to impact your hormones so much if your thyroid's not working right,
Sluggish thyroid, probably sluggish everything.
Exactly.
It is like a metabolism master.
Yeah.
And there will be, all the way to sluggish bile. I mean, we're going, way
Yeah.
outside of what people are thinking about,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's a real problem in my opinion. And that's, as someone with hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's, I feel like it's really important to help as many women as I can, and men. It just happens to be that women are much more likely to have these issues than men. So yeah, that's
yeah, it's
there's
so
so much
crazy
to say
me.
about that.
Yeah. I mean, we could do a whole episode just talking obviously about the thyroid and, explaining to everybody, but yeah, that basic, I mean, I tell people all the time, like, at least if they won't do anything else, ask them to run your antibodies, because then you're at least going to know, and obviously I always say push for free T3, because then we know what your active hormone is doing. Your free T4 doesn't tell us shit if it's not, like you said, converting.
You need the free, you need the active forms, not the things that are sequestered away.
Right.
And if there's a big stress dynamic, we really want to look at that RT3, and that would be something that you could either do if the practitioner is super progressive, or you can do later and just really see. I do that if there's been a huge like stress event, and things that we were working aren't really changing, and then to see what that number is.
And a lot of times is that from inflammation that
it can be, yeah. And so then that is blocking the ability of to do what it needs to do. So I think that the thyroid is it's dynamic, and it's I don't know, it's hard to understand without a lot of really deep study. So I think that's why people also get confused around it or overwhelmed.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
What am I supposed to do here? Oh, my doctor says this is that. Well, those are two separate things, and so I think it's advocating with my, for my clients to what to talk to their doctor about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then if, I've recently had a client who we had to switch, she decided, okay, I'm not getting what I want from this doctor. Can you help me find someone in this area that will run these tests for me? So
absolutely.
Then it becomes this sort of advocacy mode.
I love that, because there are doctors out there and, functional medicine doctors, naturopaths, et cetera, that really do understand the thyroid and understand how to properly go about that. I mean, I was lucky to some extent, because I probably have had subclinical hypothyroidism since I was, 15, but I mean, I know that in my 20s, I got testing done, and it was always quote unquote fine until I saw a naturopath who said to me, he said to me, you have subclinical hypothyroidism. And he was like, we're going to try, it was prescription because it was California. So he's able to prescribe, but, prescription glandular. And, that was, I think I was 29 by the time that happened. And, it certainly helped, but there was so much that needed to come around that too, and so really understanding like the glandulars that can help, but all the minerals and everything that you need for the thyroid. So
all of those things, it's so multifaceted.
Well, and we're going to talk more about this, right? Because we are actually going to do this webinar in January that's all about the connection between hormones and thyroid and adrenals, because it's such a, they are so interwoven. You can't really like get away from one without dealing with the other ones. And so we really want everyone to understand those connections better and what they can do to support, because I mean, as I'm sure we'll talk about, those minerals that are needed for thyroid are missing in many of our diets, and the amount in particular.
And because that's, soil erosion, all the things that we'll talk about, that we're no longer being able to get them in our diet. So that's where targeted supplementation becomes really necessary in lots of ways for a lot of people. So I'm excited to talk about it. As you can't tell. Keep talking.
I know, I love it. And we'll definitely share with people, how you can look at your tests and see some of the minerals that you are probably deficient in based on this test, right? I mean, it can tell you so much, just simple blood tests if you do a full thyroid lab. So I'm excited about that. So you guys stay tuned for that link to sign up. It's going to be a free webinar coming in January. So
which is Thyroid Awareness Month.
Yes, even better. Bringing it all together. Well, thank you so much for being here today with us and sharing all this cool stuff. I know that you guys are offering a guide to stress reduction, right?
Yep. You can get our guide to stress reduction in 5 minutes or less, because we know that the effects of stress affect everybody, and all, higher blood pressure, weight gain, restless sleep, everything is connected to sleep. So we thought it was really important as a handy guide for people as they're either transitioning or going through stressful situations. And then that will put you on our wait list for the Vital Basics, which is our Done For You program that will be coming out in the next couple of months, a 6-module course that outlines what we feel are the vital basics of health.
Very cool.
And it really brings functional and naturopathic medicine to people in their homes.
Oh, I love it. And so what is the website people can go to get that?
At Expat Health Code or expathealthcode.com. So you can grab it over on our Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, you name it, we're there. Or expathealthcode.com.
Cool. And we'll also put that link in the notes to today's show so people can directly click on that. Definitely follow them on Instagram, and also follow Vashti on Instagram too. And that's at Green Papaya, right?
Yeah, greenpapayahealth.com.
Okay.
I am talking about all things autoimmunity and thyroid.
Yeah. So important. So glad that you're doing this work. It's so helpful.
Likewise.
So we're trying, right? We're getting out there and really just helping women as much as we can, and men too, but
Yes.
Okay, you guys, thanks so much for being here this week. Thanks for being on the podcast again. It was great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really looking forward to our time together in January.
Yeah, me too. All right, you guys, I'll see you next time.
Okay. Bye.